do you feel about dinosaurs? What do you think about underwater dinosaurs? How about American dinosaurs? Enjoy! I've never seen any of his videos, so I hope it's interesting.
Wondered why we call some creatures in the water sea monsters, but we don't call things on land monsters? Well, there's probably a good reason for that, which is that the waters of Earth, not the land, hold the most terrifying, mysterious, and sometimes unbelievable
What are those?
predators that usually always out-nightmare their terrestrial counterparts. And because there's been life for around 4 billion years, and everything is constantly changing, it's only natural that tons of scary and frankly twisted oceans, seas, and their inhabitants have come and gone. But in the end, only one can take the crown as the deadliest. And it's hard to argue against that title going to a specific ancient seaway that existed tens of millions of years ago in the most unlikely spot of all. And what's really strange is that as fate would
I feel like you guys are trying to tell me words. Bless you, pen. I can't even pronounce that. I don't know what any of this is.
have it, its domain would one day give way to arguably the deadliest piece of land on Earth as well. And this wasn't just some coincidence, as its creation as the deadliest waters, and then the rise of the deadliest land, were both ultimately tied to a single event, which put the world in a collision course with both, so to speak. It all began roughly 100 million years ago in North America, when at the time, the continent looked remarkably—
Okay, sorry, I distracted 100 million years ago, but I just see Mia, and I went, haha, Mia. 100 million years ago, okay.
a lot like it does today, at least from space. But when you got down on the ground, you'd find that nothing was normal. And I'm not even talking about all the dinosaurs or pterosaurs mocking about, but rather the land itself, as it was undergoing immense—
Okay, I was gonna say something really silly, but I want you guys to just lock in for a second with me. I was like, how come they don't have actual footage of the dinosaurs? At least I thought about it before I said it, but I was like, why is it like a 3D rendition? I don't understand. I'm sorry, apparently I didn't get enough sleep. Oh my god, I'm so sorry. Freaking love you, God. At least it clicked before I just said it out loud, because I was like, why would they do that? That would be a little difficult. Yeah. Why don't we have dino selfies? That's a brain rot moment. I need more sleep. Oh my gosh. Okay. First I watch you say I've made the right choice. I do sometimes make funky little decisions, huh? They were in Jurassic Park. True. Okay, back to the video. I'm sorry, I had to share that with you guys.
chaotic changes, with two tectonic plates bashing into each other on the regular, causing frequent massive volcanic eruptions and creating vast mountain ranges. The volcanic activity alone likely upended life in the area and made things rather difficult. But it was really the changing the land itself that threw a wrench in the timeline, as while the two plates were colliding, they created a massive basin that ran vertically down much of North America. Now, typically basins always have an impact on the environment, yet this time around, things were a little bit different, as everything else about North America supercharged just how terrifying it turned out to be. For starters, the continent was less elevated at the time, and the world in general was way hotter, resulting in water levels being higher than normal.
Right.
These 2 points combined resulted in mainland North America eventually being invaded by water, which began in the north with the Arctic Ocean rushing down through the basin, where it eventually connected with the Gulf of Mexico, thus effectively slicing the continent in two and creating the western interior seaway, which in my opinion is the deadliest body of water the Earth has ever seen. At its greatest extent, this seaway measured some 600 miles or 970 kilometers wide, and was over 2,000 miles or 3,200 kilometers long. And yet, it was remarkably shallow, only having a maximum depth of 2,500 feet.
Wow, really? Could we go back to one continent and make traveling easier? Thanks. That would make it crazy. Take it easy, Diamar. Take it easy. Have a good rest of your night. Possible but complicated? I mean, I know a lot of this stuff. It's like general stuff, so I'm trying to see where he's going with this.
Or 760 meters. Now yes, that's still uncomfortably deep as far as swimming goes, but for its measurements, it was basically as thin as paper. And to really drive this home, 6 lakes on Earth right now have it beat in the depth department, and the Mediterranean Sea has a max depth almost 7 times greater, which thus makes you wonder, how could there be any sea monsters? However, it was this extreme shallowness of the western interior seaway that largely resulted in an explosion of monsters, as it led to a large percent of it being shallow, warm, and sunlit, resulting in booming coral reefs and highly productive epipelagic and mesopelagic zones. Then, on top of it virtually being all tropical shallows, it also acted like a mega watershed, collecting runoff from both of the new island continents it created, Laramidia and Appalachia. This diluted the waters, but it also led to a lot of resources being dumped in, making the soup even more hardy for life, or so you could say. And this isn't even factoring in the gobsmacking amount of environments the Seaway birthed, as besides coasts, you now had the new addition of lagoons, wetlands, marshes, deltas, and more. All of this combined was like roids for life, and it didn't take long until, simply put, you could find every monster you wanted on demand in their final forms, and thus leading to its loving nickname, Hell's Aquarium, if that's any indication for you.
That thing looks funky. Okay, so all right, we got a lot of background information now. I want to know about them now, because look how cool that thing looks.
For starters, reptiles were largely represented by multiple giant mosasaurs, some of which were the largest of their kinds to ever live. And they were in many ways the head honchos of the Seaway, and went after just about anything they could catch thanks to their titanic skulls, jaws, and chunky teeth, which were perfectly designed for cutting through massive bodies. The most famous, of course, was the Mosasaurus hoffmanni, but it wasn't actually the most common face, with that title going instead to the near equally giant Tyrannosaurus, as well as the...
I'm not gonna remember any of these names. They look cool. They look similar, but I'm just gonna call it, that one dinosaur, the Saurus.
smaller Platycarpus and Clydastes. However, because the Seaway was just so abundant, mosasaurs ended up being not the only apex predator you had to watch out for, as large hyperpredatory sharks, also called the water's home, who often can measure 5 meters or 16 feet long, and in some genera could even outsize the biggest great whites ever recorded. And thanks to their teeth, speed, and sheer aggressiveness, it actually seems that in a few cases, these sharks ended up becoming much more troublesome for certain life than the mosasaurs were. So with giant mosasaurs and sharks to worry about, this alone would be enough for most to get the picture not to take a dip here. And still, the list of killers remained long, as giant carnivorous fish were plentiful too.
I love giant carnivorous fish. Let's go. Something Saurus noted. Yeah, when everything ends in Saurus, it doesn't stick. Something, just this mosasaur. Yeah, what's it called? A Saurus. Mosasaurus is related to a monitor lizard, so the Komodo dragon is related to these massive sea lizards. See, that would have been cool to know in the video, though. You know what I mean? Like, oh, it's related to Komodo dragons. I'm gonna be like, whoosh, love Komodo dragons. That's like 30 euros. Okay, Rob. All right, calm down. Let's learn about these carnivorous fish now.
Weren't only quite ugly, but could also gulp down.
They're not ugly. They're fine.
Man-sized prey, whole, not caring about what you were, as long as you fit down its throat. And then on top of that, you even had krakens, i.e. cephalopods, to worry about as well, as it was in this relatively small sea that the largest cephalopod to ever live emerged, the
I'm waiting for him to say, like, completely something unhinged and how, like, these things are dangerous, because, again, I look at this and I'm like, oh, he's just a little guy, he can't, but then I realized we just learned about the squids and everything, too, so I'm sure he's not just a little guy. And look at him, what, can they fit their tentacles through the gills like that? That doesn't look safe. That's not safe. Silence, Rob, oh my god, I'm afraid.
Basosia, which weighed up to 1.5 tons. In other words, nearly 3 times heavier than the colossal squid.
Okay, I didn't know they were that big. 1.5 tons? Oh. Oh, okay, I take it back immediately. I ate my words in about 4 seconds. Okay. Oh, yeah, I know things back then were bigger, but like 3,000 pounds? That's a lot bigger. Look at the comparison to the diver. Oh, okay. Oh, that's a pass. Okay, maybe he's not just a little guy. All right, I take it back. I take it back right now. I ate my own words within seconds. Oh god.
Squid, our biggest tentacled friend of today, which also makes this the largest invertebrate of all time. This being said, of course, not everything that called these waters home were necessarily giant hunters, as there were plenty of plesiosaurs around that preferred smaller fishes, as well as giant sea turtles that weighed 3 tons, but were rather chill, enjoying smaller sized fish and jellyfish. And then you also had a lot of animals that you could still expect to find in seas to this day. Like obviously a diverse range of fish, other cephalopods, corals, algae, and so on. And as one might expect, it wasn't just aquatic creatures that got a piece of the pie, as the rich waters led to a mind-blowing amount of pterosaurs, and may have been directly behind the most successful one ever, at least from a number standpoint, the Pteranodon, which we...
I was gonna say pterodactyl. I was close. God dang it. The higher oxygen concentration and huge prey species allowed things to grow a lot bigger. Yeah, that's terrifying. I'm glad that's not how it is now, because I already don't leave my house, so like that's kind of terrifying.
know of through over 1,200 different specimens, and each of them could be 6 meters or 20 feet long, so by no means small. And then on top of this, it was also thanks to the sea's creation that we got one of the largest crocodilians ever, Dinosaurus, an 8-ton behemoth with a bite strong enough to obliterate bones, while also having absolutely overpowered armor which covered nearly its entire body. And to make this an even scarier prospect, this croc did not necessarily live solely in the sea, as it was found primarily along the Seaway's coasts and adjoining waterways.
Well, that makes sense with like current crocodiles and alligators. They land and sea. That checks out. The Loch Ness Monster, House Fred's Run. Yeah, it's just a little terrifying.
Giving you just one more reason to steer clear. And ultimately, no place was spared by the sea's influence, as even fully terrestrial animals got a power up from the Seaway's formation, mainly since the division of the continent resulted in 2 brand new islands, Laramidia and Appalachia, which both became very diverse with different ecosystems, and resulting in North American dinosaurs undergoing a lot of diversification. So much in fact, that when the golden era of the Seaway began, the land was climaxing too, so to speak, reaching levels of life unseen in ages, and both islands ended up producing their very own unique animals. And if you were planning a time travel getaway to one of them, here are a few key differences you might want to know. The western island, Laramidia, had on average much larger dinosaurs, possessing numerous sauropods which were more rare in Appalachia, while ceratops and ankylosaurids were much more prevalent here as well. You could also expect to encounter far more snakes while walking around. And
oh my gosh, snakes would be bigger too. Glad this video explains why humans weren't around back then, because it checks out. Yeah, we wouldn't have made it. This is literally just playing Ark. This is how I feel. The giant alligator dino was called Sarcasticus. Yeah, I laughed at the name. I don't know if you heard me chuckle. Yeah, I guess the PTSD. Yeah, these things are a little scary, a little afraid. I'm glad I only can see them in a video game, you know, or in videos, you know, pictures and stuff.
though lizards in general were less common, the continent did have a pretty major insect problem, so make sure to bring bug spray. Though to be honest, I doubt you'd notice it
Oh, I hate bugs. Okay, ready for me to be grossed out. Okay.
that much, as the biggest problem was the presence of relatively large tyrannosaurs, of whom a few evolved massive skulls and bodies, outsizing anything found in Appalachia. Yet, with all this said, don't think the eastern island was some peaceful paradise. No siree. Because while larger tyrannosaurs hadn't really taken root there, many smaller, yet still deadly ones did. Namely, the dryptosaurids, who typically...
Yo, he's got the drip though. Okay, Dryptosaurus. This is an amazing pose, by the way. Kudos to the museum. That clock here plus the giant snakes in this world, whatever reason, I love these animals. That's why my tag is a crocodile. That's still terrifying. I wouldn't want to be anywhere near these things. The bugs were also a lot bigger back then. Yeah, I don't want to think about the bugs. That I would imagine an ant, like, oh, no thanks. Nope. Not even the size of a loaf of bread. I would throw up.
had longer, more versatile arms and claws. Plus, Appalachia had a dromaeosaur infestation too, as well as an increased number of large nodosaurs, hadrosaurs, lizards, and then get this.
Nodosaurs, hadrosaurs, lizards. Nice. And then this one, which I can't even pronounce.
Odontosaurs, or at least one unnamed kind. And then, in a twist, it was here that dinosaurs met their match, as Appalachia was eventually overran by crocodilians. And not just the Dinosuchus, who was the most plentiful here, but also numerous other kinds of aquatic, semi-aquatic, and even terrestrial crocs. And for what it's worth, I'll also mention that for a short time in the early days, Allosauridia, and even the Acrocanthosaurus, possibly called this place home. So clearly, while life inside the western interior seaway was thriving, so was life on land. And it wouldn't be crazy to have called North America the most chaotic place on Earth, both in terms of...
Okay, random, I know he's talking about something else, but when the crocodiles do this little roll thing, it's so cute. It's so cute. Car chart of a favorite large theropod. Oh no. There was one bug that was about as long as a full-grown man is tall. No thanks. That's a pass from me. It's a pass from me. Yo, isn't it kind of cute? He's just doing a little rolling.
Land and sea. But the western interior Seaway still had one final trick up its sleeve, as its presence had unknowingly laid the foundation for the most iconic dinosaurs of all time. While the sea had always kept animals on their toes by fluctuating in terms of sea level, things started to take a permanent turn some 70 million years ago, as the water started to recede, and would basically never stop, courtesy of the continental plates starting to uplift, resulting in the land rising higher and thus slowly draining the waters. While the sea receded, its disappearance, as well as the plate movements itself, had large physical impacts, and influenced the climate too, which potentially resulted in the fact that within a couple million years, only 20% of the dinosaurs from the Seaway's glory days were left standing. Not to mention that many in the waters disappeared too, like Cretoxorina,
Are they really gone, though? Are they really? North America was the most chaotic place on Earth. It was, but it still is, too. You're so real for that, TJ. It's a cute little roll thing. I asked the death roll. Okay, well, I wouldn't want to be in the death roll, but if you're looking at it, you're like, okay, look at him. He's doing flips. He's doing 360s over and over.
Kalon, and Deinosuchus. So at first glance, this may all seem bad for life, and good for any potential time traveler looking to stay in one piece. However, as the saying goes, one man's, or dinosaurs, misfortune is another's opportunity. And while we do not know exactly where the Seaway stood by 68 million years ago, we do know that it was greatly reduced, and in doing so, had created a very peculiar situation, as it opened up a huge amount of new land ripe for the taking, and created fertile soil through the sediment it left behind. And it was in this very vacuum that the most infamous place on Earth arose, which housed animals so legendary that of all the formations we know of, it has become the best known, and that is Hell Creek. Its domain stretched out across portions of present-day Montana, Wyoming, North Dakota, and South Dakota, which had all prior been completely submerged by the Seaway. And in its absence, the area had become a vast floodplain littered with swamps, forests, rivers, and lakes, which are all great for life. But something was still different about this place, as it was home to a lot of dinosaurs who were also record breakers, chief among them, possibly the largest predator to have ever walked the Earth.
Don't say it. Don't say it.
The Tyrannosaurus rex. It was partially thanks to the Seaway's reduction and fauna turnover that it became the sole large predator in North America, and was without a doubt the baddest predator on the entire planet at the time, and perhaps ever, at least on land, as it was built like an absolute tank that can only be truly
He's got a big head and little arms.
appreciated when comparing it to other giant carnivorous theropods. And for now, it tentatively remains the biggest of them all, at least from a weight standpoint, with the largest known femur indicating a weight of possibly 12.5 tons.
A femur? 12.5 tons? What the? The largest predator ever walked the earth? Your mother? Well, I didn't know my mom was a T-Rex fan. That's crazy. Imagine T-Rex trying to make a bed. It just seems so silly that T-Rex is like the most known like predator for everything, but he doesn't even really use his arms. The femur indicated 12.5 tons total of the whole thing. Okay, I thought the femur itself was just 12.5. I was like, excuse me? Holy macaroni. Okay, well, yeah, that's a little scary. It's got a big mouth. Yeah, but like, I mean, I guess it's got some mobility too, but it just seems crazy that like it's a big jaws. Well, yeah, I guess that checks out. There's like nothing else that could attack it besides its own kind. You don't need big arms with big, powerful jaws. I mean, true. All I can see is this guy's arm can't even scratch if something itches. Freaking weak. Yeah, it can't even scratch his tummy. Arms were still useful and strong back then. There was an old theory they were used for tickling or stimulating the oh, well, that's fun. Shark with legs. But, like, sharks, I mean, I guess sharks are well known in the water, but they were bigger things.
While average sizes were between 5.4 and 8 tons. And just for good measure, the biggest complete specimen, dubbed Scotty, also holds the title as the largest completed theropod specimen known thus far. And as the rule goes, with great size comes even greater jaws. And the T-Rex had a titanic head, which was larger than a grown human, and filled with giant, pointed, and slightly serrated teeth that can be pretty much summarized as lethal bananas.
Banana for scale. Thank you. Thank you, scientists. Very nice.
And were absolutely overpowered thanks to massive muscles, which let it bite down with over 60,000 newtons of force. Which, to put that into perspective, is 3 times greater than the current strongest bite force on Earth.
That's terrifying, according to some studies. That's still terrifying, even if it's an inkling more than that. But okay, yeah, because they're a bit bigger and, you know, taller and stuff, so Some stuff I've heard that Triceratops is probably one animal that basically make a T-Rex think twice. You think so? Is it because they can't like well, they can still bend down and bite them, but like they have like the spikes in the front, right? Paleontology is a bit of a problem that the most famous dinos get the most money to study, so you know a lot about them and not a lot about the less popular ones, which gets worse over time. No, no, that's not cool. I mean, I like T-Rexes. I think they're interesting, but yeah, I want to learn about all of them.
And is strong enough to pulverize armor, muscle, and bone. And upon impact, it basically vaporized everything it touched, as evidenced by fossilized turds, which contained bones smashed so finely that they were like sand. On top of this, despite their appearance, the Rex also had deceptively strong arms.
We're gonna learn about the arms. Oh my god, they heard me. They're like, you're right, you're wrong. Their arms are great. Here's why.
That together could pick up weight close to half a ton, or pin struggling animals. And then to complete the package, besides having remarkable vision and smell, there's also a chance that this creature was social, possibly forming packs, or at least congregating when blood was spilt. So, not great. And in the end, this was pretty darn close to a perfect predator, and its size, plus bite, allowed it to hunt giant herbivores that were often absolute units themselves, being off the menu for the vast majority of other predators. So clearly the Rex was one bad apple, and the last predator you'd want to run into, which is why Hell Creek was so deadly, as it was here that the king was the strongest, with a paleo study finding that it was the second most common dinosaur. And while it did live elsewhere in America, 85% of named specimens have come from this one place alone. So good luck trying to avoid one. And for the cherry on top, the T-Rex was quite rowdy, even when not hunting, as among specimens, many show signs of nasty fights, and in some cases, bear evidence of cannibalism.
Yeah, I was gonna say the only thing that would attack it is itself, it seems like it. I mean, I know a lot about dinos, but it's all from the land before time, so it might not be accurate. Same. Literally same. That and parts of Jurassic Park, I guess. Oh yeah, fossil poop. So a T-Rex could still win an arm wrestling match against you. Yeah, they would still win. They would still win. We're just cooked. And I was like, oh, they don't use their arms. That's pointless. Just kidding, psych.
And honestly, the only saving grace was that due to its absurd robustness, the Rex wasn't exactly cheetah-like, and probably didn't bother much with smaller fleet-footed prey. But don't you
Ah yes, its only downfall. It's not as fast. Thank goodness. Imagine if T-Rexes could just like zoom past you. Just like, you know, like 200 miles per hour. They'd have no chance. Triceratops is head on a ball, so it could literally rotate its head in basically a circle. Yeah, and it has the horn, so it's somewhere. But look at this. Literally the fight we're talking about right now. It's crazy. T-Rex had the largest eye of any land creature ever, so probably had the best vision regardless of what Jurassic Park says. I never doubted they wouldn't have good vision. I know their smell must be like impeccable. Look at those nostrils. Look at that nose. Basically, no matter what T-Rex goes, the head of the Triceratops will always be looking at, and that's why Triceratops kind of scares. Yeah, but they can only do so much. Like, if, like, look, there's 2 T-Rexes now. So, like, you're cooked. One-on-one, I suppose, but, like, this isn't looking too good.
worry though? Because while the Tyrannosaurus was the sole giant killer, Hell Creek was home to a lot of little killers too. Relatively little, that is. One of which may not have been so unrelated to it. The Nanotyrannus. A much faster and nimbler predator, but who was still uncomfortably big, hitting a
He looks like a T-Rex. Sorry, Monster Hunter mentioned.
maximum of 1.5 tons, and likely hunting things more close to our size, if you get my drift. Now, you may know that it's not really agreed upon what exactly this little nightmare was, as some say it was a juvenile T-Rex, while others think it was a unique genus. But frankly, I don't know if that really matters, because regardless of its true nature, it was still deadly, swift, and upended any potential peace for smaller animals. And then, in addition to many tyrants, you also had to reconcile with the fact that Hell Creek was a haven for raptors. Ironically, the
Yeah, I feel like a lot of raptors would be a pain in the butt too.
one that we associate most with the T-Rex, the Velociraptor, was not present in Hell Creek, as they didn't even live in North America, but instead we had other raptors, which were honestly much more scary, with the most common one being the Acaroraptor, who did actually happen to be very close related to the Velociraptor, but was slightly larger, measuring up to 3 meters or 10 feet long, and weighing the same as big Bernese mountain dogs. Like others of its kind, it was armed with lethal sickle claws and a light build, granting it both speed, agility, and deadliness. And what's more is that, like the king, this guy had a nasty bite, just for very different reasons.
Yeah, I was gonna say, raptors look really familiar to T-Rexes. I feel like they're like almost, not one the same, but like a smaller version. So it makes sense that to be terrifying. And if I remember correctly, they travel in like packs, which makes it even worse. But imagine raptor doggo as a pet. Oh, it'd be sick. If they were trained and didn't attack you, that'd be sick. Also, why did the eyes in here look so human? That's creeping me out. I don't like that.
Seeing that its serrated teeth were backed by a relatively weak jaw, resulting in applying weaker, yet rapid bites to slash, cut, and incur blood loss in prey. And let's just say, this seemed to do the trick, as it ended up being one of the 8 most common dinosaurs in the area.
Unrelated, it kind of reminds me, it kind of looks like a vulture. It gives me like kind of strange vulture vibes. Huh. Just click now.
And then on top of this, while rarer, you also had to worry about a much greater nuisance, but still of the same category, the Dakota raptor. This fellow dromaeosaur was built a bit like the Acaroraptor, having light springy bones. The thing is though, is that it was absolutely massive for a raptor, measuring up to 6 meters or 19.7 feet, and weighing a bit more than even a grizzly bear. And of course, when you supersize a raptor, you get supersized claws too, with its being as long as a large chef's knife. So, about 9 inches from top to bottom, allowing it to pierce extremely deep into prey, puncturing and destroying vital organs. And what's more, is that its flexor tubercle, the part responsible for wielding the claw, was built in a way which indicated that it may have had the greatest slashing power of any dromaeosaur. The only good news here, for herbivores and time travelers, is that recently, there has been a debate on if this predator had even existed, as some paint it to be chimeric. In other words, the bones that make it up may have come from more than one animal. But regardless, this still means these bones came from something. And the other raptors sure seem to have their own fair share of scandals too, as while another one, the Saarnitholestes, definitely existed, no one is certain if it survived long enough to see Hell Creek or had died earlier. And hopefully it's the latter, because frankly, the area did not need any more predators, because among the ones that did exist, there was already plenty enough carnage. And yet, you do not become the scariest land on Earth with just deadly carnivores. You also need equally intimidating herbivores, which is what you definitely got in Hell Creek. And I mean that to the fullest extent, as literally the average Joe in the area was the Triceratops, one of the largest ceratops, if not the largest, to have ever lived. To get a good idea of what this beast was like, imagine an African elephant, but more robust, meaner, and equipped with 2 pointed horns and a massive shielded head. Now, you have some
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, okay, I could see it. I could see it.
What you're dealing with. And most predators can only dream of taking one of these guys down, with the larger ones sometimes weighing 10 tons. And even for the king himself, the T-Rex, they were no joke, with each of their 2 enlarged horns measuring over 3 feet or 1 meter long. And the Triceratops is actually the only dinosaur with direct evidence of having injured a T-Rex. And even amongst themselves, their brutalness was shown, as 14% of all specimens had damage to their heads, reflecting intraspecific competition. Additionally, it was also joined by the nearly equal giant Torosaurus, which just added that much more spiky horns to the neighborhood. Now, any formation would be iconic for having just one of the largest ceratopsids ever, but being big was simply the norm here. I mean, just ask the Ankylosaurus, the heaviest ankylosaurid ever discovered.
I've been saying these names all wrong. I thought it was Ankylosaurus. Okay.
This biological tank was armed, or rather armored, to the teeth, possessing bony osteoderms that were wider than dinner plates and covered most of its upper body, providing immense defense and heft. And while it was quite a bit smaller than the T-Rex or Triceratops in both length and height, it still gave them a run for their money in weight, with the largest clocking in at 8 tons.
8 tons? Oh my gosh. Elephant, but with hippo with a shield. Yeah, I was like, I know what those dinosaurs are, but he put it like a perfect comparison. Gets sad, even when a dinosaur you like gets labeled as a chimera, meaning it wasn't even a real dinosaur anymore. Or aren't they still finding out more about dinosaurs that just like kind of change over time because they're just discovering more things?
And it just so happens that it was also joined by other very armored and robust ankylosaurs, such as the Denversaurus. But what really made the ankylosaur so special, and an absolute menace, was its tail.
Can't believe the dinosaur is named after Denver. That's crazy.
Or rather, what lay at the end of it, as it had 2 monstrous osteoderms that formed a hulking club that was then powered by flexible yet strong muscles.
Yeah, this thing would scare me. Because this literally just, I mean, I know it's like Pokemon are based on these things, but this thing just seems like a murder tale.
that resulted in it being swung with greater forces than 370 professional baseball players swinging a bat combined. And based off of more recent studies, it possibly goes up to 1,000 players combined. So, enough to shatter even a T-Rex's leg upon impact.
Okay.
And while not set in stone, it is one of the few large animals from Hell Creek that's yet to be found with any damage tied to predators. Meaning,
Yeah, a really powerful wrecking ball, but you'd have to, like, swing your butt at the T-Rex and get, like, his... Because I would assume that it would crush his bones. I would assume so. We know T-Rex ate Triceratops quite regularly, as we have multiple Triceratops fossils with the T-Rex teeth embedded in them. See, that's cool. See, we need to do more research about these. That's cool. Yeah, ouch.
it was such a beast that even the biggest theropods in existence left it alone. And even the stereotypical dinosaur punching bag of the land, i.e. hadrosaurs, would have been in most cases an untouchable unit, as here we had the Edmontosaurus.
Huh.
This hadrosaur was among the biggest to ever grace the earth. And most forget that once in a blue moon, specimens indicate that exceptional individuals could grow to be 13 meters or 43 feet long, and most likely weighed more than most T-Rexes that it lived with. And sure, it didn't have any clear visible weapons, but as far as titans go, it had speed, surprisingly powerful legs, and a robust tail. So think of a mega-sized bull, just without the horns.
Huh. Yeah, that's interesting. Their tails can only move in one axis, so it can't bend upwards. Oh, so then they can't really fight against the T-Rex unless the T-Rex is bending down low. Okay.
And then throw in some deadlier kicks and a huge tail as well. So suffice to say, it probably wasn't easy pickings, despite how hadrosaurs are often depicted. And that's even before factoring in their tendency to stick to large herds, the scale of which would make anything today look absolutely laughable. So between all these giants, you pretty much had to be a titan amongst titans to even fathom getting by here. And lower to the floor, smaller predators still had their work cut out for them. Because remember that trend about them being big? Well, it extended to others too. For example, one of the 4 pachycephalosaurs, known in Hell Creek, was the largest of its entire clade, being close to half a ton, and had a built-in battering ram that
I know it's terrible, and I know their heads to protect them, but my first thought was bald. I'm sorry.
it was very generous with using, showcased by multiple specimens found with cranial dents and cracks. There was also a good amount of unusually big oviraptors and ornithomimosaurs too, who often go forgotten about, but were quite diverse. The most notable among them being the Struthiomimus and Anzu, who interestingly enough were not predators, but rather herbivores or omnivores, with both being heftier than your typical human, but considerably faster. And in the case of the Struthiomimus, reconstructions have given it a top speed of 80 kilometers or 49.7 miles per hour, so almost twice as fast as Usain Bolt's top running speed. And ultimately, even birds seem to have gotten a bit of that good Seaway stuff, as one of the largest avian dinosaurs of the time, Magnus avis, lived in Hell
Magnus, let's go. Banger name.
Creek, with this name literally meaning big bird, but not that big bird. So dinosaurs truly had Hell Creek on lock. However, as resource heavy as Hell Creek, non-dinosaurs will no doubt spring up too, and a wide variety of interesting ones came to make the land their home. I mean, we may even have to thank it for boids overall, as the earliest known one was actually found in this formation.
Ooh.
Meanwhile, various crocodilians perused the waters, making any drink a exciting task. And then on land, you had carnivorous lizards, which reached sizes
Komodo dragons?
seldomly seen before. And one genus was the Paleosanoa, which can only be summed up as a Komodo dragon looking like carnivore, but was in reality much more related to the Gila monster, and possessed literal shark-like teeth, which helped it shred prey
Look at that chin, though. Sheesh. Yeah, I knew it was a Komodo dragon. I knew it.
apart. And still, I'd rather have dealt with it than the true dragon of Hell Creek, the Inferno Draken, or literally, Dragon from Hell. Now in reality, this was not a Game of Thrones dragon, but rather a giant pterosaur, specifically an Asdarchid, that for a long time was actually thought to be Quetzalcoatlus, but is now recognized as a distinct genus. And in life, it had a wingspan of about
Why is his neck so long? Imagine the bone structure for that neck. Holy moly. I thought it was Quetzalcoatl, but I guess that's different.
4.2 meters or 14 feet, which is giant for a pterosaur, or really anything for that matter. And yet its true strength was not from its wingspan, but rather from its height. You see, while standing on its knuckles, it would have been able to easily peer straight over your head, and was equipped with its own titanic noggin that sported a pointy, sharp, long beak. And opposed to most pterosaurs who normally hunt fish, it's hypothesized that this guy preferred to stalk the lands on foot, using its large beak to swallow prey whole or pick them apart.
So kind of like a seagull, just...
And it's generally considered to be a mesopredator, meaning if you were a small juvenile dinosaur, squamate, or mammal, you are in for a whole world of hurt. So really, the only thing I can say about this is that it seems like wherever you were, Hell Creek had you covered with nightmarish animals.
Yeah, mega seagull. I was like, this thing's kind of it almost seems not even real. It seems like something that like a child would draw. It just seems so like I understand it was a thing, but like it's crazy.
But perhaps the cream of the crop is something which may confuse you, because it is a mosasaur, the Hell Creek mosasaur. Now, this may seem odd, as I said Hell Creek wasn't a Seaway, and yet in 2021, researchers found a mosasaur specimen here, and a monstrous one at that, with most estimating it to be 11 meters or 36 feet long, with a few even more liberal estimates giving it numbers as high as 15 meters or 49 feet, which if was the case, meant you'd have needed a bigger boat. And some have even tentatively called it a Mosasaurus hoffmanni, but for now, at least officially, it remains indeterminate. But at this size, it's hard to see how anything was off the menu. And even an unlucky T-Rex who—
Yeah, I could see this thing attacking a T-Rex. That's why it doesn't go in the water. Quetzalcoatl, however you spell it, is the biggest pterosaur, not the only one there were a lot. Oh, okay. So I was on the right track then. Quetzalcoatlus. These names are so silly.
ventured too close to the water might have become a snack. But the bigger and more perplexing question is what it was doing in Hell Creek. For a long time, researchers knew that the environment had a lot of aquatic creatures, like fish and a bunch of turtles. Yet these were mainly found in fresh or brackish waters, and in far more inland locations than where you'd expect to find a full-fledged mosasaur to be. So this has led to some differing hypotheses, none of which are currently verified. The most extreme of which is that this behemoth represented a population that learned to coast into brackish and sometimes even freshwater from the Seaway further south. And another proposed idea is that it was simply a lone individual that had accidentally found itself far more inland than it should have been. After all, while not the Seaway, Hell Creek was still connected to it through its water systems. But none of these ideas are turning out to be very strong, and some have completely gotten rid of the notion that it died in brackish or fresh water, with another, more supported hypothesis being that the Seaway's demise wasn't as straightforward as originally thought, meaning that you had some episodes where waters would rise again, giving Hell Creek some pretty interesting coasts. But whatever the case, I think the point remains that Hell Creek definitely earned its infamy, which thus leaves us with a final question.
Uh-oh. I would say those things are kind of cool looking. Dyslexia can't handle down names. I don't even have dyslexia and I can't spell them. Don't worry, dolphins, you're good. Yeah, this is a funky. Okay, all right, last one. This is the last part.
And that is, how do you fix a place where virtually every animal has become legendary enough to obtain icon status? Well, it turns out that you give it a good old factory reset by lobbing a giant space rock at it. Thanks for watching, and until—
Well, yeah, I guess that's one way of dealing with it. I thought he was going to hit us with, and there's something really tiny that deleted all of them, Lamau. Yeah, well, okay. That was a thing. I learned a lot of dinosaur stuff. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the content, please consider liking and subscribing. If you have any recommendations for future videos, please feel free to leave them in the comments below.